Can you imagine how a woman over 30, orphaned from birth, abandoned by her husband, despised by her in-laws, could rise above it all to become the CEO of a fast food chain in America? Grab yourself a quiet spot and a warm cup of tea, because I'm about to share a story with you, my story. I'm Nora Blake, 33 now, and if you told me a decade ago that I'd be sitting here, sipping coffee in a corner office overlooking Seattle's skyline, I'd have laughed in your face. Back then, I was a nobody to everyone who mattered, especially the family I married into. But here's the kicker. I didn't just survive their betrayal, I turned it into the sharpest weapon I've ever wielded. Let me take you back to where it all started, because this isn't just about winning. It's about clawing your way up when everyone's kicking you down. I grew up bouncing between foster homes in Seattle, a city that's all gray skies and wet streets to a kid with no roots. No parents, no family, just a string of temporary beds and faces that forgot me the second I left. I was skinny back then, with long black hair I'd hide behind, and gray eyes that saw too much. By 25, I'd landed a job slinging burgers at Burger Bonanza, a fast food chain on its last legs, owned by the Pierce family. The place was a mess, greasy counters, grumpy staff, and a menu that hadn't changed since the 90s. I hustled hard, wiping tables and dodging rude customers, because it was all I had. That's when I met Daniel Pierce, the golden boy of the family. Tall, with hazel eyes that crinkled when he smiled, and a charm that could sell ice to a snowstorm. He'd lean on the counter some nights, watching me work, and say, "You're wasted here, Nora." I'd roll my eyes, but my stomach fluttered. Someone saw me, really saw me, for the first time. One slow shift, I couldn't hold back anymore. "Your app's trash," I told him, wiping ketchup off my apron. "Make it a loyalty thing. Points, deals. People will come back." He stared at me, then grinned. "You're a genius." I wasn't, just desperate to keep a job. But it worked. The app launched, sales spiked, and suddenly Burger Bonanza was buzzing again. Daniel started hanging around more, bringing me coffee, asking me out. "You're my spark, Nora," he'd say, and I fell, hard. We married at 28, me in a simple white dress, him in a suit that screamed money, his hand warm in mine as we said our vows. I thought I'd finally found a family, a place to belong. Oh, how wrong I was. His parents, Evelyn and Harold Pierce, hated me from the jump. Evelyn was a wiry woman with pinched lips and a pearl necklace she clutched like a lifeline, her blonde bob always perfect. Harold was a hulking man, balding, with a voice like gravel and a stare that pinned you down. The day Daniel brought me home, Evelyn's eyes raked over me, my cheap shoes, my nervous smile, and she muttered, "An orphan. Really, Daniel?" Harold grunted, "She's not one of us." I stood there, heart sinking, but Daniel squeezed my hand, whispering, "They'll come around." They didn't. Even after my app saved their sinking ship, they refused to give me credit. "Daniel's the brains!" Harold boomed at a family dinner, slapping his son's back while I sat silent, picking at my food. Evelyn smirked. "You got lucky, Nora, that's all." My throat burned, but I swallowed it, clinging to the hope that love would soften them. It didn't help that I was an outsider in their world. They lived in a sleek suburban house outside Seattle, all white walls and polished floors, a far cry from the foster dumps I'd known. Family dinners were torture, Evelyn nitpicking my manners, Harold ignoring me unless it was to grunt about standards. Once, I overheard them in the kitchen, Evelyn hissing, "She's a charity case, Harold. Daniel could have done better." Harold rumbled back, "Let her play wife for now. She'll fade." My hands shook as I gripped my glass, their words carving into me like knives. I'd saved their business, poured my soul into it, and they still saw me as dirt under their shoes. Daniel would shrug it off. "They're old school, babe. Don't take it personally." But it was personal. Every snide remark, every cold glance piled up, a weight I carried silently. Then there was Lisa, their housekeeper, a round-faced woman with warm brown eyes who'd slip me extra pie at those dinners. "You're too good for them," she'd whisper, patting my hand when Evelyn wasn't looking. Lisa saw what they didn't. My fight, my worth, and her quiet kindness kept me sane. But even she couldn't shield me from what was coming. 3 years into our marriage, cracks started showing. Daniel stayed late at the office, his excuses flimsier each time. I'd lie awake in our bed, the silence deafening, my gut twisting with a dread I couldn't name. One night, I grabbed his phone, stupid, desperate, and saw her name. Kylie. Texts like, "Miss you," and "Last night was fun," lit up the screen, each word a punch to my chest. My hands trembled, my breath caught, and I knew everything I'd built with him was about to shatter. That's when it all started to unravel, faster and uglier than I could have dreamed. Daniel wasn't just drifting, he was gone, and his family was ready to kick me while I was down. But here's the thing about being a nobody your whole life. You learn how to survive in the dark. They thought they'd break me, but they lit a fuse instead. Keep listening, because what came next wasn't just survival, it was war. I'd spent my whole life being invisible, but nothing prepared me for the moment Daniel ripped the mask off our marriage, and his family drove the knife in deeper. That night, I found those texts from Kylie. I didn't sleep. My gray eyes stared at the ceiling, tracing cracks in the plaster, while my chest burned with a mix of rage and heartbreak. I'm Nora Blake, and this is where the fairy tale I'd clung to turned into a battlefield. The next morning, I confronted him, my voice shaking as I held up his phone. "Is this her, Daniel? Kylie?" He stood there in our kitchen, tall and unbothered, his hazel eyes cold. "Yeah, it is," he said, shrugging like I'd asked about the weather. "I'm done pretending, Nora. I need someone who gets me." My knees buckled, but I gripped the counter, forcing out, 5 years, and that's it?" He smirked. "You were a good run." That smirk, cocky, cruel, cut deeper than the words, and I felt something snap inside me, a thread I'd been holding onto since I was a kid. I should have seen it coming. Daniel's late nights had stretched into weeks, his excuses flimsier than the paper napkins at Burger Bonanza. But hearing it, seeing that smugness, made it real. I stumbled to the Pierce house that afternoon, rain soaking my jacket, hoping, stupidly, that his parents might care. Evelyn answered the door, her blonde bob pristine, her lips curling as she saw my red eyes. "What's this about, Nora?" she asked, like I was a stray cat. "Daniel's cheating," I choked out, voice raw. She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "What did you expect, dear? He's out of your league, always was." Harold lumbered up behind her, his balding head gleaming under the porch light, and barked, "Stop whining. Go find a new gig, girl." My fists clenched, nails biting into my palms, their disdain a familiar sting I'd swallowed too long. I turned away, rain mixing with tears, their laughter fading behind me. The breaking point came a week later, one rainy night that still haunts me. I'd begged Daniel to talk, to fix us, but he showed up with Kylie instead. She was all peroxide curls and tight jeans, giggling as he hauled my suitcase to the curb. "You're my biggest mistake," he shouted, loud enough for the neighbors to peek out, his voice dripping with venom. Evelyn stood on the porch, arms crossed, nodding like she'd won a bet. "We warned him about you," she called, her tone smug. I sank to my knees in the mud, rain plastering my black hair to my face, their voices a chorus of scorn. Daniel's taunts, Kylie's giggles, Evelyn's triumph. My hands shook, clutching wet gravel, and I felt hollow, like the orphan they'd always seen me as. But in that cold, dark puddle, a fire sparked. I wouldn't just survive this. I'd bury them. I filed for divorce the next day, my pen steady despite the ache in my chest. "Take it all," I told my lawyer, a wiry guy named Mark, with a kind frown. "I don't want their scraps. No alimony, no shares, just freedom." I moved into a dingy studio near downtown Seattle, the kind with stained carpets and a leaky faucet, and went back to waitressing at a diner called Mel's. Every shift, I'd pocket tips, $5, 10, my hands raw from scrubbing plates, my mind racing. Burger Bonanza was slipping. I'd heard whispers from old coworkers like Jen, a chatty redhead who'd stuck around. They're hemorrhaging cash, she told me over coffee one night, her eyes wide. That scandal, manager skimming funds, killed their rep. I nodded, sipping my black coffee, a plan forming like a storm cloud. I knew their playbook, their weaknesses. I'd built them up once. I could tear them down. Nights were spent hunched over a cracked laptop, teaching myself marketing on free YouTube tutorials, SEO, branding, apps, anything to claw my way back. I'd mutter to myself, they think I'm nothing. I'll show them nothing. At 32, I took my savings, $3,000, from 6 months of diner shifts, and pitched Nora's Nibble to Sam Carter, a lean guy with a scruffy beard and a food truck empire. Fresh, fast, app first, I said, standing in his cluttered office, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. He squinted at me, then grinned. You've got guts. I'm in. We started with one truck, bright green, my name in bold white, parked near Pike Place. I posted pics on Instagram. Nora's Nibble, burgers sizzling, captions sharp. Built from scratch, not handouts. Lines formed, buzz grew, and I felt alive again, my gray eyes glinting with something fierce. By 2023, I had 3 locations, small, scrappy stores stealing Burger Bonanza's lunch crowd. Daniel showed up one day, pale and sweaty, barging into my first shop. Nora, you're killing us! Stop this! He pleaded, his hazel eyes desperate. I leaned on the counter, smirking. You killed us first, remember? Enjoy the view. Evelyn called that night, her voice shrill through the phone. You snake! You've ruined everything! I laughed, cold and low. No, I'm the one you underestimated. Live with it. Burger Bonanza folded. Bankrupt, doors boarded up, their neon signs dark. Harold came next, pounding on my apartment door, his face red. You've destroyed us! You'll pay for this! He roared, fist raised. I stood my ground, gray eyes locked on his. You paid with your arrogance. Get out! He stormed off, and I shut the door, my heart racing. Not with fear, but victory. They'd laughed in the rain. I'd drowned them in it. Watching Burger Bonanza crumble felt like exhaling a breath I'd held for years. The weight of Daniel's betrayal, Evelyn's sneers, and Harold's threats finally lifting off my shoulders. I'm Nora Blake, and at 33, I'm not just standing. I'm towering over the wreckage of the family that tried to bury me. It's 2024 now, and Nora's Nibble isn't some scrappy food truck dream anymore. It's a Seattle staple with 5 locations, tendrils stretching into Portland, my name stamped on every menu in bold white letters. I've gone from the orphan they mocked to a CEO they can't ignore. And the best part? I did it all without a single crumb from their table. They thought they'd erased me that rainy night, but I painted their sky red with my comeback. The past year has been a whirlwind of late nights and hard-earned wins. My first storefront on Capitol Hill buzzes daily, customers snapping pics of my signature truffle fries. Nora's Nibble racking up thousands of likes. I've got a team now, 10 employees across the stores, including Jen, my old Burger Bonanza pal, who's my right hand. You're a legend, Nora, she said last week, her red hair bouncing as she stacked napkins, her grin wide. I smirked. Just stubborn. But inside, my chest swelled. Pride, not arrogance. Sam, my investor, drops by sometimes, his scruffy beard framing a laugh as he counts receipts. Told you had guts, he says, slapping a stack of bills on the counter. Guts, yeah, but also a fire they lit when they threw me out. Daniel's a ghost of his old self these days. I heard through Jen he's shacked up with Kylie in a rundown apartment near Tacoma, scraping by on odd jobs after Burger Bonanza went belly up. Last month, he slid into my DMs. Pathetic, really. Nora, I messed up. Can we talk? The message read, his profile pic a blurry selfie with bags under his hazel eyes. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over block, remembering his smirk that morning in our kitchen, his shout in the rain. No, I typed back, simple and final, then hit send. My heart didn't even skip. Closure's a hell of a drug. Evelyn and Harold? They're shadows too. Couch surfing with some cousin, their sleek suburban house foreclosed, their empire dust. Jen saw Evelyn at a gas station once, her blonde bob limp, her pearls swapped for a faded scarf. She looked lost, Jen said, and I nodded, feeling nothing but a faint, cold satisfaction. But it's not just about them failing. It's about what I've built. My office sits above the Capitol Hill store, a small space with a big window, Seattle's gray sprawl stretching out below. I've got framed articles on the wall, local woman revives fast food scene, and a desk cluttered with sketches for new menu items. I'm rich now, sure, 6 figures in the bank. But it's the respect that hits different. Customers stop me sometimes, shaking my hand, saying, "Your story's insane, I'm rooting for you." I smile, gray eyes softening, and think, me too. I've carved a place here, a legacy that's mine alone, no Pierce name attached. That's the real victory, knowing I didn't need them to shine. The sweetest moment came yesterday, quiet but heavy. Jess, one of my servers, a 20-year-old with short brown hair and a shy smile, caught me after her shift. She's an orphan, too, bounced around foster care like I was, and she'd started at Nora's Nibble last spring. "Can I talk to you?" she asked, fidgeting with her apron. I nodded, leaning on the counter, and she took a breath. "You're why I didn't give up," she said, her voice cracking. "I read about you, how they screwed you over, and it kept me going. You're my hero, Nora." My throat tightened, gray eyes stinging as I flashed back to that rainy night. Daniel's venom, Evelyn's nod, me in the mud. I stepped forward, hugged her tight, and whispered, "You're already a hero, Jess. Just keep fighting." She nodded, tears spilling, and I let mine fall too. Not for the past, but for her. For us. They wanted me gone. I became a lifeline instead. That hug stayed with me all night. I sat on my couch later, a small apartment I'd bought near the water, the Puget Sound glinting outside. No more dingy studios. This place has hardwood floors, a real bed, a life I earned. I sipped tea, ironic, right? And thought about how far I'd come. Daniel's mistake line used to echo in my head, Evelyn's charity case cutting deep. But now? They're just noise, drowned out by the hum of my stores, Jess's words, the clink of coins in my register. I turned their contempt into my crown, and it fits damn well. Harold's last threat, "You'll pay," rang hollow. They're the ones paying, broke and forgotten, while I'm here, unbreakable. So here's the thing, I'm not special. I was a nobody who got tired of being stepped on. You don't need a fancy name or a family to rise. You need a spark, a reason to fight. They gave me mine, and I ran with it. Now I'm curious about you out there. Who's kicked you down? A partner who walked out? A family who didn't see you? A boss who wrote you off? What are you doing to flip the script? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, I promise. Hit that like button if this stirred something in you. Subscribe if you're in for more real talk. And tell me this. How do you turn their betrayal into your victory? Because me? I took their fast food throne and made it mine. And I'm not giving it back.